Hello. Thank you for allowing me to share my heart with you today, and thank you for listening to a man who no longer has a tongue. I know, that sounds like the setup to a really bad joke, but it's not the punchline, it's just my reality. Ironically, I once made my living with my voice. Now I speak through a keyboard and the help of AI. Funny how life works, isn't it? I never would have guessed that God might use a computer to help me share my story, and maybe, in some small way, offer hope to someone else. Let's be honest, we all have things in life that don't go the way we planned. That's why I titled my first book, Not What You Had Planned. Because sometimes you go to school, build a career, start a family, and everything is right on track, until it's not. Back in 2008 and 2009, I weathered what I now call the perfect storm of life. My business collapsed. I lost my home out on Cooper Point in Olympia. My marriage fell apart. Then came the big finale, tongue cancer. It's what I call compound adversity. It's like life spun a wheel of misfortune and landed on, take everything. And as if that weren't enough, it whispered, also, let's make it ironic. He speaks for a living? Perfect, take his voice. But instead of God taking me out of the game, he handed me a new playbook. I couldn't see that right away. At the time, it just felt like everything was falling apart faster than I could sweep up the pieces. I went from being a respected business owner with a booming vocational school to watching my car get towed out of the driveway and wondering how I'd pay for groceries. I had to lay myself off to get unemployment. That was a surreal low point. It was around that time I started asking God some tough questions, but I learned something really important. God is not intimidated by our questions. In fact, he welcomes them. He's okay with you expressing your anger too. In Psalm 34:18, it says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." And trust me, I was feeling pretty crushed. But that verse, it didn't just live on the pages in my Bible. It became real. It came alive for me. Let me take you into one of the more humbling scenes in my story. After one of my surgeries, the first big one, the one where they removed half my tongue, I was standing in the kitchen, staring at the feeding tube hanging from my stomach like some kind of tragic party favor. My face was swollen. I couldn't speak. I couldn't eat. And I definitely didn't feel like the strong, capable man I had always tried to be. I felt disgusting. Then my youngest daughter walked in. She didn't say a word. She just wrapped her arms around me and held on. She had challenges that she was facing too, so I tried to hold it together. I failed. We stood there crying together. Her arms, my sobs, our unspoken pain, that was church. That was grace. Her arms were an extension of God's as he said, "I'm still here." You see, I used to think strength meant never breaking down. Now I measure it by how much I'm willing to share my story with others. It's allowing yourself to be vulnerable and share your deepest fears. That moment stayed with me, and it became part of what I shared in my second book, When It All Falls Apart. Because life does fall apart. That's not a possibility. It's an inevitability. But God also promises that we don't have to fall apart alone. He's not scared of our mess. He meets us in the middle of it. Now let's talk about the humor in all of this for a moment. Yes, there was pain. Yes, there were moments of deep grief. But also, there were moments where all I could do was laugh. Not because anything was funny, but because laughter was the only thing that made the weight of it all a little lighter. I laughed at the absurdity of it all, wondering, what could possibly happen next to make this story crazier? And if you've ever gone through chemo or radiation, you know there's a lot of indignity mixed with a lot of humanity. Strangers see you in hospital gowns, which, let's be honest, were clearly not designed by anyone with dignity in mind, and suddenly conversations get real, fast. You learn quickly that vulnerability is no longer optional, it's holy ground. And on that ground, I discovered 5 truths I want to share with you today. Things I wrote about in When It All Falls Apart, and things I've lived painfully and joyfully over the last several years. Number 1, don't think of loss as punishment. Sometimes it's pruning. Jesus says in John 15 that even the branches that bear fruit get pruned. At first, that feels unfair. Lord, I was doing well. Why the clippers? But pruning is about growth. It's about redirecting energy to what matters most. I had built a whole life, and God gently said, let's try a better one. Number 2, forgiveness is not a feeling, it's a decision. I had a lot of reasons to be bitter. People I trusted let me down. Some walked away, others just disappeared. And I don't say this to sound holy, but holding on to bitterness would have been like drinking poison and hoping the other person gets ill, Forgiveness didn't come easily, but it came. And when it did, I realized it wasn't just for them, it was for me. Number 3, gratitude is the gateway to joy. Now, I know that sounds like something that my grandmother would have crocheted onto a throw pillow, but hear me out. When I started making a list of what I still had, even in the hospital, even after losing my voice, something in me shifted. I had my daughters, I had my parents, I had friends who showed up. I had one more day, and one more day is always a gift. Number 4, you don't have to be fully healed to be helpful. There's this idea that we can't minister or serve until we've got it all together. That's nonsense. If we waited for perfection, nobody would ever get anything done. God isn't asking for polish. He's asking for permission. Let him use your story. Your scars are not shameful. They're sacred. They tell people you're not alone. Number 5, the fire doesn't always end, but God walks through it with us. Remember Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? God didn't show up before the fire. He showed up in it. And when the king looked into that furnace, he didn't just see 3 people, he saw 4. Sometimes the miracle isn't escaping the fire. It's discovering you're not in there alone. That truth changed everything for me. I stopped asking, why is this happening? And started asking, who am I becoming through this, and who can I encourage with my story? I may have lost my tongue, but not my message. I may have lost my job, but not my calling. I may have lost my plans, but I didn't lose my purpose. And neither have you. Whatever you're going through today, loss, illness, depression, disappointment, a failing marriage, I want you to know something. You are still here. And if you're still here, God's not done. He's not surprised by your pain or overwhelmed by your questions. He doesn't need your perfection. He wants your presence and for you to lean on him. A closing thought. I never imagined I'd be sharing my story without a physical voice, but God had something else in mind. And here I am, standing in front of you, not as someone who figured it all out, but as someone who simply refused to quit, someone who kept showing up, someone who learned that when life falls apart, sometimes it's the beginning of a better story. So, whatever fire you're walking through today, know this: God is already there. He's not waiting for you on the other side. He's in the middle of the mess, holding out his hand, whispering, let's walk through this together. And don't worry, if you can't walk, he will carry you.